that you're probably tired, and I have something very new to show you today, which is something the sharing of information of some learnings, some takeaways that we got over 30 years in recycling throughout the productive chain. I'm not going to go into detail about that, but because we have several people from the business area, I'm going to show two or three slides. And in one of them, I talk about all the pet market. These are the main three topics of our conversation today. The first is how much the representative of ABPEC, a small association, a small, but we have 100% in the PET resin, 75 in the transformation, and almost 80% of the cycling in Brazil are members of ABPEC. So we are, in fact, the biggest owners of technology throughout the world, some of them with global representativeness. So here we have the installed capacity in Brazil, 1 million tons a year of PET productions in two plants, one of 550, the other of 450. And we have a big capacity in terms of recycling. And then you see a certain inconsistency that we have in Brazil, which is all this. So in the best scenario, it has more than 30% of vital moments due to lack of collection of bottles. So this is the first sign of what's happening in our country. So this is the recycled PET demand, and that is why we believe that PET is successful because of its application. I'm quite sure that many of the plastics are going to reach this point. We have been developing this for 20 to 30 years, so this has facilitated creating demand, so a little bit of our strategy is to create demand, and with that you value the material that's being collected post consumption. And just a small observation, when we look when we compare ourselves with other countries, Mr. Armet gave us a picture of it. Well, in Europe, you have a high level of reclamation. So, which means collection, not exactly the recycling in the country. So, this 360,000 tons a year already means 56% of all the resin that is consumed, the PET resin, and it's collected here, used here, and destined here. So we solved the problem here. There are some signs of imports because exactly at the moment we don't have enough material to provide the recyclers. So as you have already seen, all the regulation issues is valid for the industry, but not valid for the mayors, for the city halls. So for many years, we have been postponing the compulsory approach of the governors and municipalities implementing a selective collection. So it's not those that collect only in four or five households, but much more. And but only by doing that we're going to be able to increase this level of collection. So currently, 90% of the recycled PET comes from pickers. So people that are at the executive don't do anything. So currently, the recycling in Brazil, any material, aluminum, steel, is subsidized by poverty. We only have recycling because we have people that get their income picking material and selling for the industry that created recycling to give it a final destination. So I had something to show here, but when we see this group of bottles on the left hand side, this shows that over the past 6 years, there was a growth of 22% in consumption of virgin resin, which is not very much. It seemed that PAT grew more, but the fact is that at the same period, more precisely over the past year, or the last year here, we inserted in circularity in the recycling chain around 165 tons. So the recycle adds up to 885,000 tons. So what shows that this is an average growth of 31%. So in the same period, it won't stop there. Technologies are arriving, the precision of modeling, of robots, of injection, the system with robots conducting cycles of production of 100 bottles per second. All this reduction in weight has allowed to reduce the weight of the bottle in 23% over these years.
And it grew about 58%. And we have here a more respectable number. So reducing the consumed volume in each packaging, but increasing its participation within some markets. We've said it here, I won't be repetitive, but what does this mean? Why can I create different cycles? The creation of demand depends a little bit, of course, on the packaging design. I need to have a design for environment. We need to project well packaging so that it's attractive for recycling and that it allows cycles. This is what happens to PET. Sometimes I hear something not that precious about the environmental habits, and I say, PET can do a bottle circularity, then it degrades. And many times people will ask these questions, but how many times can you do this? You can do it in numerous times as long as the recycling is well done. But then when it's finished, you do a down cycle. Where did you get it from? It's all an up cycle. So the products done from a recycled bottle, when you can do bottle to bottle, you have high value. We buy a PET resin there, which let's say costs $1. Some products, some paints, some coloring and gel coating that can be used to $5, $7, up to $5, $7. So a huge upcycle. So all these other allowed cycles, PET that was born a textile and it became a bottle becomes a textile again. 50% of recycling was for textiles in the past. When you look at other applications in saturated resins and other things like paint and so on, it's not that it can be done, it is done. It's already a reality here in Brazil. Some problems with packaging design when we talk about lid and, of course, the label. They are all plastic, of course, but they need to be well projected. Almost 100% of the recycling units for PET in Brazil use the liquid to separate plastic. They are done by density. PET is heavier, it drowns, and the polyolefins, they float. So it's possible to separate plastics very efficiently. Of course, there is a series of other things within a recycling unit for food grade, optical detectors with high precision. All of that has evolved and it's part of the recycling world here in Brazil. But label is a huge challenge. Color in the packaging as well. I don't call it a problem ever, but the colored packaging is also recycled. It has destination. 100% of the assemblers use recycled PET bottles in their carpets and so on, but they use it. So in their materiality reports, there's a lot of recycled content. Look how interesting this is. information is when we look at this, and we did an analysis from 2022, the income, the turnover that comes from PET recycling is about 3.6 billion reais. 40% of that stays in the base of the pyramids, the one, all of those people who are collecting the bottles and so on, they get the income from that, and then the user substitutes it by a virgin material. Apart from environmental issues, there's a huge source of use, and the other types of plastic will also create that. We have a business opportunity in other plastics, synthetic plastics, whether it's packaging, injected parts, or textile. This is going to create a lot of opportunities for a country like ours that needs, and it has its industrial park that it's unused. You know, we need to give like a rebirth to these industries. Now, I came to my point. I saved some time for this. We can enjoy it. We had to gather forces to do that. For 5 or 6 years, I ran away from this study. I knew what I could find. It's very hard to convince companies to release its information for us to continue this study. So I connected to all my main clients, Abir, which is the soda manufacturing unit, and the producers of edible oils that use PET as their packaging. Here we have about 85 to 90% of all the PET packages that go into the market in these main three segments. And we wanted to have credibility. We knew the industry would be to blame. Media would talk about the industry. Oh, the study, you bought it. So we made full effort to make it believable. The study, we hired the CTE from Anvisa. The majority of them are within the installations of Itaú Cetab that belong to this. And CV Brazil did the comparison. It's an organism here in Brazil about it that represents the European institutions here. So this whole process respected all ISO 44000. There is a process, recommendations for this, all the criteria. And at the end, one of the requirements is going through a critical review with two scientists from two big universities in Brazil, from Rio and also from Campinas. We followed all the criteria and a little bit of the parameters for you to understand not only the demands but also the credibility of the study. These were the packages. The study was done in October. Now, as scientist, I learned that even if you include recycling, you call it still Bersatun. And the packaging compared is also from cradle to grave. That's what we call it. 500 milliliters for water, for soda 250, 1 liter, 2 liters, and oil 600 milliliters, aluminum 350 milliliters, water and also soda. And for water in the glass bottle, it's about 1 liter. So they're all there in the market. It was about everything. We didn't consider anything about hiding this information. We know that the competing materials they study and publish one or another axis of a life cycle analysis. We use 12 axes to do this. All of them, you're going to see a little bit of what the study is. I can't talk about the specific data, but all companies that were part of this required an NDA. They delivered data to Itaú Cetab so that it would have the best possible accuracy in this information. It's necessary to always have in mind from now on that the number of references 1 liter of water, soda, or oil delivered to the Brazilian homes, respecting all physical chemical requirements of packagings and also its shelf life. So all of that needs to be respected. One of the demands, the highest ones, is to define the contour limits. We need to have all the boundary conditions defined so that you don't make mistaken comparisons. The study done in the US with different type of distribution, we train, here we use diesel. These comparisons can't be done. You can do one to one. You have to equalize that. This was done here, this study. And for you to have an idea the degree of representation on the right of your screen, the bottling and distribution, we collected information with significant degree of 80% of the market. All the big players participated. Coke, all the units, the Coca-Cola system, Heineken, Ambev, Minalba, all the big players, Cargill, ADM of oil, they all participated. The biggest ones in the world contributed. And it's complex to receive this information. Who wants to pass on this information? I can't release this information, but all of it, CO2 emissions to the air, to the earth, they are confidential information from this company, even competitive. So to get this information was tough. Goes through the legal department. I'm not talking about small companies, I'm talking about huge and brands all over the world. And getting this information from them makes it credible to the theme. That's why I dedicated time for this. I won't get into detail. We have the reference. We have the same information in the next chart. This is a little bit of the circuit that we use. The contour, we consider the label, the lid. The process was done with original data from Brazil. This is new. There is no publishing of data that use basic data of industries put in Brazil. They used the imported data bank, Echo Invent, that they use all over the world. So this was used for other information as well, but all the measuring of distances that this company have for their product distribution was computed into the study. Out of these 12 axes, we're not talking about one or the other. We have some competing materials that talk about recycling. We recycle quite a lot. What is that, Adriano? When you bring it to light and you show other measuring thing compounds, why do they broadcast or publish this with an aspect very close to professional ethics? This is it. A huge part of this that is bombarded in the media, and as Mr. Arnold said, they are fooling our children. We are teaching them wrong. Via Google and Wikipedia, anyone can put what they want. When you go to the scientific side, we can see how trustworthy plastic can be. This study is for PET bottles, but I feel secure to say that polyester, polypropylene, or UPE, PP will be unbeatable in a comparison such as this. Climate changes, depression of ozone layer, photochemical ozone, anthropization, cancer, non-cancer toxicity, mineral resources, use of water, soil, everything was taken into consideration to create this comparison. It's very tough, and we've just finished this study. We're now going to talk about communication. We discussed that so much. I participated in an international meeting with big market players, and many were talking about what could be done, we need to communicate, and so on. But what I'm gonna say now, this quote may be a bit strong, but I risk my neck here to say that it's true. Many people talking, but what I said to him for communication, we need you to put money on the table, money where your mouth is. Communication is costly. He's laughing because it's closer to the consumer, but this is what happens. We don't have. My lawyers concern me. We can't pay Yamboni something or raise that bottle of water halfway through a debate. Have you seen that? Everything costs money, so probably one of the big companies in this market, companies put 10, 20 billion dollars to do a campaign. You can pay a negative campaign against plastic. The president of Latabol was there to say what? Say bad things about plastic. Come on. It's a harmful wave. There is a war here, and we have to gather our strength because the big players of paper invest so much in this, and the big players of stainless steel and everything. So that's why our partnership to align PET is small. We have to produce technical arguments to subsidize our defense. We haven't got to where we wanted to be. So the results for water almost at the end. When you create products mass, when we look at this, we look at it and what do we do? To start with, I sent the bottles to the cemetery, 300 milliliters. It's not possible to say what it means, this graph. I need 21.9 grams of PET to wrap 1 liter of bottle to deliver to people's homes in Brazil. That's what the study shows. I need almost a kilo of glass to do this. Do you have any idea when you load the truck with water, beer, to deliver to the next neighborhood, if they have returnable bottles? Have you any idea how much of it is liquid? 48% of the load is packaging on average. Now we will substitute this glass bottle with PET. You know how much what the percentage? 2%. So it's double when than when you use glass. When you use aluminum, it's still, even though aluminum is light, I will still need a little bit more than 3 packagings to have a liter. 34.5% superior than PET. I can't work on all items, and you are a Abipatch site. The summary of the life cycle assessment, evaluating the life cycle, and there is a summary there at our website. If you look at the analysis of climate changes, that's what everybody talks about on the media. The kilogram of CO2 equivalent, the impacts caused in the production chain, transport, secondary material, shrink, bottles. What's above the zero line is the environmental impact, and what's at the bottom is what compensates this. So when we look at the case of glass, what it causes as environmental impact is huge. You look at aluminum as well. Aluminum, if it wasn't recycled, it would have a huge impact. But it has recycling and it compensates. The number on top of the column shows the difference, even considering the full recycling of 98% of aluminum and 76% of recycled contents. Even considering that, the 1.5-liter bottle, which is the biggest volume in the market, is almost half of aluminum when we think about greenhouse gases emissions. So these impacts are notorious. If you believe in science, have faith, because it's impossible that material is criticized and considered harmful to the environment, in the issue that matters most, talking about greenhouse gases, which we have here. Why does aluminum talks about how important it is? I have an invoice here from an aluminum bottle that I bought just to prove the amounts compared to a PET bottle. You look at it in a hotel, they swapped bought a PET for aluminum cans. What do they want? Their argument is that it's environmental. Actually, the 500 milliliter bottles that they sold to the consumer, they sold 3, 4, 5 reais. Now they charge 18 reais for the aluminum can. What the guy from retail wants is a higher average ticket. It's money on the table again. So I'm adding value with a false environmental appeal. So the owners now they should dedicate as much as we should and prove the contrary. And this is a graph for all other axes as I can't talk about numbers. There is in 100% reference. So the worst in each category means 100% of negative impact and the others are smaller. We almost didn't show this graph because glass gets distorted and we had a fixing there and almost all the axes glass goes above and the depression, but glass is made out of silica and PET is fossil. How can you talk about mineral resources? So learning this, when you talk about the depression of mineral resources, doesn't mean volume of consumption, but the lack of it. So some stages of production of the PET resin, you use a catalyzer that is very expensive. And the industry has been substituting this. Nobody wants to use it, and we still consider this a learning, a topic that is significant, and we put them into this.
So another way to look at all that is to start in the communication plan by associating these advantages in another way that facilitates reading. Like, for example, let's say that PET uses 53% less water in all its productive process, 86% less than aluminum. And I'm talking about only the disposable. So the toxicity rate is 98% lower, so inferior to glass. So in terms of climate changes, the 1.5 liter PET is 45% less impacting than aluminum 350 milliliters and 98% less than other substances. So I believe that our defense plans and our communication plans need to be fed with scientific data that are consistent. In our case, it will be part of our context, and we are already, I'm not going to review the media, but I have already sat with a big newspaper of Brazil that has published data that was not in accordance with reality. So the best that we could consult here in Brazil, and we're going to use it legally if necessary. So it is not.
I talked about water. The impacts are pretty much the same. I've run out of time, but that's it. These data connected to life cycle analysis for PET, it's very beneficial. So the first congress that I've shown this, I haven't even introduced it to the PET industry yet, but it's a pleasure to share this with you. And I'm sure there are other plastic materials with which we are partners, they will evolve. That's what I had to say. Thank you.
pouquinho com a gente no papo. Obrigada ao
Thank you, Auri. To deliver his thank you sign, I invite Andrea Curveu from Val Group. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Auri.